St. Jose Maria says that a saint is not somebody who is perfect, but rather it is somebody who keeps trying. I think another way to say it is a saint is a sinner who recognizes he or she is a sinner, repents, goes to confession, and starts over again. Or another way to say it is a saint is a sinner who keeps persevering. And this weekend, that's what we have. It's all about perseverance. The first reading of the gospel, we hear how perseverance as a virtue. The gospel is the disciples come to Jesus saying, teach us how to pray. And then after Jesus teaches them the Our Father, he then tells them that they need to persevere in that prayer by telling this great story of a man who has a friend who comes at night and he has nothing to give his friend. So he goes to another friend of his saying, give me some bread to feed my friend. This traveler has come. And the guy from within the door says, go away. My family and I are already in bed. We are asleep. And Jesus says, if he doesn't get up to give you the bread because of your friendship, he will get up and give you the bread because of your perseverance. In other words, if you keep knocking on the door, he'll finally just get up and give you what you need. The first reading, we hear Abraham in the book of Genesis. They're standing over looking at the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And you might recognize the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's characterized as shown as a city of just everybody is sinners. That is a terrible city. And God wants to destroy it, wants to just end it all. And Abraham goes and says, what happens if we find 50 righteous people? And God says, well, for the sake of the 50, and then 45. And Abraham gets them all the way down to 10. And I think sometimes we can read it as Abraham's bartering with God. But I think really what Abraham's doing is he's being persistent with God. And you and I, we need to be persistent with prayer. We need to be focused on the Lord, focused on our life as a disciple. I have a dog, Bailey. He's crazy sometimes, but he loses his mind when he sees a squirrel. He loves chasing squirrels. And this past week, I was sitting in my backyard and I was praying and sitting out there, and there was a squirrel that ran along the power lines. And Bailey was sitting out there with me, and he went under the line and was barking and losing his mind at the squirrel. I was trying to call him to come back, and he wouldn't do it. And I think the squirrel was taunting him a little bit, just like, well, you can't get me, and just sitting up there. Now, sometimes we need to be like my dog, which sounds crazy, but let's use the analogy of just focused. That focus that he has, that nothing else mattered in that moment. Because there's a million things that distract us. Even just here, scrolling on the internet, it distracts us from what is most important, which is focused on the Lord, being his disciple. The virtue of perseverance is tied to the virtue, one of the cardinal virtues of fortitude. And fortitude is the strength necessary to combat evil, right? So that way we turn away from sin. St. Thomas Aquinas says that our will has power, our will has authority over our passions. But sometimes we don't believe that. Sometimes we don't act that way, right? Because we feel the temptations come up and we say, well, I might as well just give up. It seems like it's over. And so this week, I want to remind us that we need to pray for that virtue of perseverance, that virtue of fortitude, to recognize that we have power, that in those moments of temptations, because we all have our favorite sins, those sins that we go back to time and time again, those sins that we've struggled with our whole life. And as soon as that temptation comes, whether it's to gluttony or pride or lust or whatever it is, as soon as we feel that temptation, we oftentimes just give up saying it's over, but that's not the case. The virtue of perseverance, the virtue of fortitude shows us and gives us grace necessary to turn away. Let us keep our eyes focused on the Lord this week with that virtue of perseverance.